Hello. I'm on stage at the Brooklyn Museum, and that's freaking cool. And in my audience are like giant Mickey and Minnie with X eyes, and that's cool. But coolest is that I'm talking to some of the smartest, most innovative marketers in America. And I know you're smart and innovative because you use Sailthru, right? People don't use our platform who want the easy way out, right? You'd be on MailChimp or something else. And we build a lot of really innovative technology so that you can feel like you've got that power at your hands to create really differentiated, competitive experiences for your customers. But we want to make that really tangible for you. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to actually use our predictions to change your most important KPIs, right? So let me start with, how many of you are familiar with Sightlines and our predictive capabilities? Okay, so I got about half. So I'm going to use this time to kind of bring some of you up to speed, right? So you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. But what we're really going to get into is how to use it to make that difference. So this is your crystal ball, right? The idea here is, as a marketer, if you could see into the future, if you had predictions about all of the people in the world, you'd be able to do fantastic things, right? That's why predictions are the holy grail of marketing, right? The idea that if I knew who was going to opt out, who was going to buy, what they wanted to buy, how much they would spend, that if I had all that information at my fingertips about individuals, I'd be able to do really cool stuff, right? So the problem is that until pretty recently, it costs a lot of money, right? And that's not just to go out and buy something off the shelf. There isn't really anything off the shelf that you can just plug in and start running predictions, change your marketing program. Usually this meant building it yourself. You got to build out a data science team to take your proprietary data set and create custom models to create a few predictions around your customer base. Because predictions don't work that well, right, when they're done generically, right? Your brand is different from yours, and your customers engage differently with you. You need a custom model. Now, there are vendors out there that will build you custom models if you have a couple $1 million to spare, right? But it's expensive. And not only that, it's time consuming. It's time consuming in terms of just end-to-end, but in terms of resource usage as well, right? Because you start with the prediction, okay, here's this great number. It tells me this person's likely to do something. Now what do I do with it, right? I got to create a whole strategy around that. I got to create new content for highly engaged users versus low engaged users, for people about to opt out against people who aren't, right? And that's all after I've gotten those fantastic predictions that this really expensive company built for me into the platform where I can actually take use on them, right? So this is exactly why we built Sightlines, okay? What Sightlines is a predictive capability that we've built using the data you already have in Sailthru, right? So every one of you, because you use us, has created this incredible data store. We know about every one of your customers, every interaction they've ever had with your marketing program on our platform, right? We know every email you sent them. We know whether they opened it, whether they clicked on it. If you have our Horizon JavaScript on your website, we know how often they visited that site. We know how many page views they generated. We know what they looked at, right? That's how we create the interest profiles. If you're a commerce company, you better have the purchase API implemented, right? If you don't, I'll find you. But you should have uploaded your purchase history so we know everything that those users have bought, how often they bought, are they buying more expensive things, less expensive things. With all of this data, right, we created a data science stack, really smart people, much smarter than me, right, took all that data and created a system that does dynamic prediction models for every separate brand, right? So you take all that data, and every night it looks at that data and tries to find models that can predict specific things about your users and your users and your users. And those models are different for every one of you, and they change, maybe not every night, but they change as your customer behavior changes, right? So what can we predict? Let's see if I can remember off the top of my head, because we don't have a slide specifically on that, but we'll get into really specific ones. Likelihood to opt out. Is this someone who's likely to opt out of your email program? Likelihood to open an email. Likelihood to click in that email. Likelihood to purchase in the next day, the next 7 days, okay? If they do purchase, how much are they going to spend? So average item value and average order value. Again, all looking forward, right? Based on all this historical data to create a prediction about future behavior. And then finally, revenue. How much revenue is an individual going to generate for me in the next 30 days and the next 365 days? That one's really exciting. We've barely scratched the surface with Revenue 365. That's essentially a prediction of lifetime value, right? Imagine what you could do with that. And then the final one, for our media customers, a prediction about how many page views. There's a proxy in a lot of media companies for how much that user's worth to me, right? That's generating those page views that create the ad impressions, okay? So we came out and we talked about this last year at Sightlines, here at Lyft. Here's our new Sightlines product. It's fantastic. The theme, if any of you were there, was marketing superpowers, okay? I was backstage just now doing my Superman stance, because I heard all the research says you feel more confident when you come out, you've done the Superman stance. But we talked about all these superpowers, right? And one of them was the ability to see the future. But I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember the Greatest American Hero show. I feel like it was like that. The whole pretext of that show was the alien came from space and gave this guy this super suit that gave him all these superpowers. And they said, you have to go make the world a better place with your superpowers. And he said, fantastic, I'm up for it. And on the way home, he lost the instruction book. So for the next 5 years, he was bumbling through his superpowers, right? And I feel like we released Sightlines, and we didn't release the instruction book. Like, here's what you can do tomorrow. And I hear that constantly with beta customers, with prospects. They go, that's so much power. What do we do with it, right? That's great you can make all those predictions. Sounds cool. I like the idea. I don't know if I'm ready for that, right? So today we want to show you how easy it is, if you turn this thing on, to make a difference to those KPIs tomorrow. Now, we want this to be somewhat interactive. I know it's afternoon. A lot of you traveled today. So at any point, feel free to ask questions. After each scenario, I'm going to ask really specifically, are there questions? But these are meant to be concrete tactics that you can execute in our platform. There's a Sightlines booth back there. Steve Wood's on the right. He's A&O. He set up a whole lot of the testing with our beta customers. On the left, Alex is one of the lead data scientists on this project. If you've got any geeked out questions, Alex can answer them, okay? So we've got the people here, and then our training, they can show you how to run the query tool, to make these segments, to apply suppression lists, et cetera. So let's get to the meat of things. I'm going to talk about 3 different KPIs that you can improve using Sightlines. First, the ability to decrease opt-outs. Seems pretty straightforward. Every one of you wants to do it. I can show you how. Increase response rates. This is the other side of that. Just decreasing opt-outs doesn't do you much good if people aren't opening the emails and reading what you're sending them, right? And then finally, what we all want to do, the bottom line, while we're all here, is to make more money, to maximize revenue. I got 4 tactics to accomplish these goals. All right, so let's start with decreasing opt-outs. So Bain & Company, why we're doing retention. Cassie was up here earlier. She said the theme you're going to hear about over and over and over and over again from us is about retention marketing. I like to add a little bit to that, lifetime value optimization. It's a little buzzier, but it really makes me think of how can I build you features so that you can optimize, maximize the lifetime value of users. And this is the first starting point. Well, let's find the ones most likely to opt out, right? This is the bar. You spend a lot of money to acquire them, to get them in the front door, to get them on your mailing list, and to build out this whole email program, right? Sweat, blood, and tears to engage them and drive this lifetime value thing. And then they just opt out. Boom, they hit a button, they hit the spam button. Game over. You can't talk to them anymore, right? They might come back to your site, they might re-engage you someday, but you've lost any ability to actually have an effect on this. So this is job 1. You got to make sure opt-outs are as low as they can be. So I'm going to go deep here how we predict opt-outs, okay? So bear with me a little bit. It's pretty intuitive, right? The most important 2 things if you want to predict opt-outs, how many messages are you sending that individual, and do they open those messages? This is not rocket science. It is the way we do it. But that doesn't sound like, oh, you could figure that out. Well, I send more emails. Nobody's opening them. My opt-outs went up, right? That's at the gross level. But at the individual level, different users in your marketing program get different numbers of messages. Different users engage those messages at wildly different rates. You have some users that open every email you send, I hope, right? You have some users who don't open any of the emails. If you send them a lot of emails and they don't open them, they might opt out, right? The next two levels, the next two variables that go in, sign-up time, how long have they been in the program? Generally, people are optimists. They sign up, right? They're not going to opt out day one. They might if you gated it and they forced it, right? And they go, spam. But most of them remember, and they're optimistic. They want to engage with that content. Same thing on the other end of the spectrum. If they've been a customer for 4 years, 5 years, they're not going to opt out after 5 years just on a whim if they've been engaging that content. But again, every one of you has a different cadence where there are different peaks and trials and how that runs. So maybe for you, it's after 6 months, people really start falling off, right? And for you, it's a year. The reality, though, is it's not just brand demand, it's individual to individual. Clicks, once they've opened it, did they find something they actually wanted to engage with, right? Just opening is half the game. If you're not showing them something there that leads them towards a conversion, whether it's selling or getting them to the site to drive more page views. Now, I know some of you have email newsletters that exist for their own benefit, but generally you want to convert. You want people to engage and take action, right? And then further down in the importance of this prediction are things like page views for our media customers. Once they get to the site, do they look around? Do they love the content? Are they generating a lot of page views? And for the e-commerce folks, are they buying? How recently did they buy? What did they buy, okay? So this is how we make the prediction. We write this every night to the user profile, every user profile, as a series of vars, right? How many of you have ever used our query builder tool? Okay, good, good. Pretty good response. If you haven't, again, talk to the teams in the back. They'll show you exactly how to do it. So that's how you can make a list or a smart list. A smart list is just a list that updates itself every time you use it, right? With the query builder, and you go in query. If you go in there and you have sightlines turned on, there's a set of variables in there marked sightlines. One of them is likelihood to opt out in the next 7 days, right? So you create a list of the people most likely to opt out, 10% most likely to opt out, and you suppress them from every campaign, and you're going to reduce your opt-outs by 30%. That's what we've seen in real tests, in real usage of this feature. And it's that simple. A query creates a smart list. You put that smart list as a suppression on your campaigns. And it's dynamic because it's a smart list. So your cadence automatically goes down for those users most likely to opt out, right? You don't send them an email for a couple of days. You didn't have to change the overall cadence of your email program just for those users, right? It's dynamic. They don't receive a message for a few days, a week. And guess what? That likelihood to opt out starts to drop because they're receiving fewer messages. After a while, they're added back to the list, and you can think of this somewhat intuitively. Now, the next email they receive isn't a nuisance. Oh, those guys again, every day, 3 times a day, whatever it is, right? But it's a novelty. Oh, I haven't heard from them in a while. Maybe I should open this email. Maybe I should engage with it. The results speak for themselves, though. So let me talk to you about a customer success story. 11 Main, we said, we've got these great predictions. And they said, that's fantastic. We don't trust you at all, right? Nobody can predict the future. Let's prove it, right? So we said, fine, we'll prove it. Now, they're an e-commerce customer, and a lot of you are like them. You have no tolerance for revenue risk, right? Sailthru told me to suppress all these likely to opt-outs. So I did it, and my revenue dropped by 10% that day. Who are you going to call? Right? And you're not going to be happy, right? Because your boss is going to be yelling at you. You're going to be yelling at me, hey, you just cost me a bunch of money. So 11 Main said, we don't have any tolerance for revenue risk. What we want to do is combine 2 predictions. Yeah, we'll suppress the 10% most likely to opt out, but we're going to add back in anyone who is also amongst the 10% most likely to purchase. So we ended up suppressing about 6.5% of their normal list, all right? The results were a 35% decrease in opt-outs during the period of that test, okay? Conversion rates went up. You know why? Because people likely to opt out don't open and they don't convert. You're sending fewer emails, and the ones you are sending are being opened and engaged with. And no impact to revenue. They didn't lose a single dollar in sales, okay? That's how powerful that is. That's how easy it is. Take you 15 minutes to set up, and you can be using it tomorrow. All right, any questions on that opt-out use case? How you can do it, what kind of data you would need, how long it takes to set up, how much data history do you need in our system? Anything? Nothing. I explained it that well. You could all go do it right now. All right, fine. Increased response rates. So this is the other side of it, right? And they put this wonderful image here, which makes me really sad, right? Is there anything sadder than an old party balloon that's like, because you remember the party, and the party was great, and all the balloons were pumped up, and now it's like this dead little thing. This is the idea, right? Having a bunch of people on your list who simply aren't opting out, but aren't engaging, that's like an empty balloon. There's no point to it. You're not going to be making sales. Yeah, your list numbers will be good, but right, no fun, right? So the idea is opens and clicks are the top of your funnel. Sending it is one teeny piece. Getting it into the inbox, deliverability, that's another important piece. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But actually getting them to open it, right, and read it, you can't generate sales from your email program if they don't open it, read it, and click on it, okay? So what if we said we're going to find those users who are likely to open and likely to click, and we engage them differently than we do the users who aren't likely to open. So if they're likely to open and click, that tells you you're doing the right thing, right? You're doing something they like. They're gonna open your emails. They like your content. They're likely to engage with it and come to your site and convert, whether it's page views or purchases. The people on the bottom end of that spectrum, you're not doing the right thing for them. You're not engaging them. That's the perfect segment to test. Try something new. Try a bolder, open subject line, right? Try a different kind of content. Try a different cadence. We're going to talk about lowering cadence a lot because it's the easiest thing to do, right? Today we're talking about easy, right? So a lot of things you can do. You can optimize the messaging and test the new messaging. People are responding. You're doing good. Keep it up. People who aren't engaged, turn it down. So let's talk about real customer success. You all know The Blaze. This is Glenn Beck's media outlet. You may agree with him. You may not. They have a very smart marketing team. This is the reality. And I know they're smart because we showed them sightlines. They said, that's great. We're going to try it. And we're going to run a test. They created a compound prediction as well. They took several measures. In fact, there's only 2 of them. They actually used 3 to create a compound measure of highly engaged versus poorly engaged users. They combined likelihood to open and likelihood to click and people who are going to generate large page views. And they said there's 2 categories. People who are high on that scale, top 70%, and people who are low on the scale, the bottom 30%. And they ran a test. Essentially what they said was, we're not actually going to stop sending or change for the low engaged. We're just going to track the different metrics across these 2 segments and see how they perform differently. What would happen if we just stopped sending to those poorly engaged users? Well, really good things. First off, they could reduce their email sending by 27%. All of you pay me regularly based in some part related to how much email you send. I just told you how to reduce your Sailthru bill by 25%, by a quarter. Just send less email. There's no risk. You're not going to lose anything because you're stopping to send to poorly engaged users. Now, don't actually go do that, please, right? Because there is a way to re-engage them. But that's a reality. You want to send email that's really powerful, that gets to the inbox. So the flip side of this is those highly engaged users, their actual likelihood to open those emails compared to that bottom 30%, 1,746% more likely to open the email. That's 17 times. We had a debate this weekend. Me and the marketing team were going back. I said, nobody's going to believe that number. 1,746, that's ridiculous. This is an actual test. That's a real number. All right, I said, why don't we just put up 17x? It's more relatable. But that's a real number. That comes from a real test, right? Engaged people are engaged. Poorly engaged people aren't. Don't send messages that people aren't going to open. It screws up your deliverability. You pay money for it. They opt out, right? All right, any questions about that? Yeah, in the back.
Just a real quick question. Why would we utilize, I guess, that measure as opposed to just suppressing people that are in the engagement level of disengaged or something like that?
Right, so we do have that engagement level built into the platform. That's looking purely at a limited amount of historic data, right? Have they been opening? The predictions use a lot more data, right? And like I said, I didn't want to go too deep into how we're creating the predictions, but here's the biggest difference in prediction data compared to most of the other RFM measures or engagement measures you're going to use. Most of those reporting are taking 1 or 2 data points, maybe 3, and combining them into this compound measure. What we're doing with predictions is literally taking 50 data series that we have on every user and looking at not just 50 different data points, but the full time series, right? Some people are on a trend up. They're opening more often. That tells me a different story than someone who opens with the same cadence versus somebody who used to open a whole lot and now opens less frequently. But if I just ran a report, they might all say they open at a rate of 10% over the last year, right? So we can do much more accurate predictions than any of those historical reporting measures. Using the engagement measure better than doing nothing, using the predictions is going to drive better results. Other questions on this point? Anyone? All right. Next example. So here we get into the fun stuff. Let's maximize revenue. Let's make more money. The key theme here, and this is an interesting one, and I can expound on it for a long, long time. Catch me over a beer later, and I will tell you a big story about identifying intent. But the notion here is a lot of focus is put on maximizing conversions. A whole lot of the marketing technology that's being sold today is all about converting once. They came to your site, make sure they buy something, anything. Make sure they do something. Get their email, right? Get them to click one more time. That's why you have entire solutions based on how are they engaging with the site, and they might do something, right? And to me, if you just do that, it's almost like, and look, we put a lot of focus on conversion lift with our recommendations, but it's almost like being a used car salesman. All I care about is today's sale. It is not maximizing lifetime value. Because any good salesperson at a nice store knows when somebody walks in the door and you say, hey, could I help you? And they say, no, I'm just browsing today. That you walk away and you let them browse, right? You don't hammer them, okay? So intent is really important in conjunction with interest. People are at different points in the buying cycle. Maybe one of these people is a great customer, but maybe you're acumen and you just sold them a brand new pair of $1,000 boots. Not many people buy $1,000 boots 2 days in a row, right? And your data's saying, hey, this is a good customer. They spend a lot of money, and they just bought recently. My RFM model tells me they're great, right? But in reality, they just bought. I have one pair of boots. I'm probably never going to buy another pair of boots, right? But I like a lot of stuff on Country Outfitter's website. There's other stuff I might buy. So this is the notion of interest, which is my historic behavior, tells me I'm interested in those boots, but my intent is another layer. Our predictions on likelihood to purchase is what's going to add that piece of intent, right? You know what they're interested in already because that's what we do, and we've been doing it for a long time. Now with predictions, you know what their intent level is. Are they going to buy? So what do we do with that information? Well, we change the way we engage those users. A lot of ideas. I'm sure you have a lot of ideas. The simplest thing to do is to say, if they're high intent, if they're on the top of that list, I want to engage them with messages about buying something now. Maybe it's a discount, maybe it's a promo, maybe it's other products that are like the products they just bought. Whole lot of things you can do to move that forward faster. You can do things like our predictions will tell you average item value. So let me suggest things right at their price point or maybe just a little above so we can stretch that price point. People who have real low intent, maybe not the best idea to try to incent them with a discount. Right? You might get them if you discount low enough, but then they're just buying for the discount. They're not really engaging with that product. You're leaving money on the table. What if I engage them with content about lifestyle, about the lifestyle that I sell, so that I can keep them coming back, so that they'll come back next holiday season, so they'll buy their friends a pair of boots, so that they'll do something else to stay engaged with my brand and stay engaged with my retention marketing program. Treat them differently based on their intent to buy. Of course, I have a success story here. Our customers, Frank and Oak, sharp folks from up in Canada. They identified customers likely to purchase, separated those from the customers not likely to purchase. And again, I talked about easy. So let's start with the easiest thing, which is just reduce that email cadence to the people who are not likely to purchase. I'm just going to turn down the volume on the emails. They're not ready to buy. Let me turn it down to once a week. I don't remember exactly, but they reduced it. And this is what happened. 62% decrease in opt-outs. I want to stick on that one for a second because this is really interesting to me. When we just focused on the intent to opt out, we reduced it by 35%. When we actually looked at a core conversion metric, the likelihood to purchase, we reduced opt-outs even more, right? So that's really interesting to me. And then 38% increased click-to-conversion. The people who did engage with that content, who came through from the email, they bought at a much higher rate. They were ready to buy, right? The predictions work. They can tell you who's who. Any questions about this one? Anyone? No? All right. Everybody wants their drink. So last one, all right? Last one, optimize acquisition. This is another story I can spend hours on. I've bored a lot of my colleagues on this one. I bring it up in exec meetings all the time. So the story here, it's an interesting graphic, the infinity graphic. The idea here is this. Look, your acquisition program is finely tuned. That's why you're in business. That's why you make money. We've been getting really good at acquisition for a very long time. I worked at DoubleClick in 2000. We did display ads. We were not very good at acquisition, right? We had an image source and an href. We showed you a 468 by 60 banner. Maybe you clicked on it. Who knows? It was a good business. Got us places. But Google really revolutionized it, right? They came along and they said, we're going to show you people with interest and intent because they're searching for cheap flights to Las Vegas. And we're going to let you bid on that, and you're going to do that. And those people are going to come to your site and they're going to buy tickets to Las Vegas. Right, that's really easy. But then it added layer upon layer upon layer of sophistication because people are pouring billions, literally billions of dollars into those digital acquisition campaigns. And this entire science grew up around ad tech and acquisition that was only building on 150 years previous of an advertising legacy we have in this country that is really sophisticated. On the retention side, in digital, I'm going to say, I'm afraid to say it, but the reality is we're not quite as sophisticated as our acquisition brethren. We have better data. We have more data. We should be more sophisticated, but we're not even judged on ROI. You know how I know we're not judged on ROI? Because when we go into negotiations, what do they ask, Tom? How much does it cost? Can I run it with like half a person in their spare time, right? Because the CMO is telling me, hey, I really care about these high-level metrics, customer retention, lifetime value, but I don't want to spend any money on it. ROI, and we're trying to change that conversation. And I know, I'm being stark. I know a lot of you are focused on the ROI of your retention marketing programs. But what we found is you can actually take all that data about your customers, your known customers, and how good they are, feed it back into the acquisition side, and make your acquisition team much, much better. All right? So what's that look like? We've got an integration to Facebook. Okay? We built this, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It's pretty simple. You can take any list from Sailthru and ship it over into Facebook. It shows up as a custom audience for targeting. We do that based on the email address. We hash it up, so it's a deterministic thing. This person is that person. They're the same person, cross-device, cross-platform, and you can go retarget them. So it's cool for retargeting. Works really well. It's great for reacquisition. Somebody opted out of your email program, and this is one of the things you can do with predictions. Likely to buy, no intention of opening email. Great. Send that list over into Facebook and give them an ad because that's a channel you can still reach them on. But that's not even the exciting stuff. The exciting stuff is Facebook has the best lookalike modeling in the business, right? Because they know who you are, because you told them, right? You told them your name, your age, where you lived, what you were interested in, who your friends were, right? So it's pretty easy with all that information to build a lookalike model. Say, these people look like those people, right? So if you use that information to drive acquisition on the back of predictions, really cool things happen. So our friends at Country Outfitter, we pick on them a lot, they ran a test on this. They took their users who were most likely to buy. Facebook integration, shipped them into Facebook, right? And then ran the lookalike model. Show me people who look like this. You know why? Because I think they're more likely to buy. They delivered a targeted acquisition campaign, a simple creative. I think it was a boot giveaway, right? Really simple creative. And they knocked it out of the park, okay? This was a proof of concept. This wasn't a huge budget. But it was a 6,000% ROI that beat a lot of the retargeting campaigns. And this was enough for me to jump out of my seat and start yelling at all the people around me like, this is a game changer. This matters. And it matters not just because of that direct ROI, because I'm going to tell you, most acquisition campaigns, they measure ROI wrong. They measure it on the first conversion. And even that, they take liberties. We had a 7-day look-back window at DoubleClick. If you saw my banner ad in the last 7 days, and then you bought, I'm going to take credit for that sale. Does that make any sense? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is that first purchase, right? Now, we hate BOFOs. Talk to Cassie about BOFOs. Those people come, they buy once, and then they fudge off, right? We don't like them because you spend a lot of money to bring them in, you sell them on discount, and they don't stick around. So what if I export a list of my highest revenue users in the future? Those people likely to generate me the most revenue. People who aren't going to convert just once, but people who are going to have a higher lifetime value. Now I can make my acquisition campaigns that much smarter. And you need every edge you can get, because every dollar that you're spending on Facebook or Google is so much more competitive now than it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. And this is going to give you an edge in that space to not just find users who are going to convert, but find users who are going to stick with you, love your brand, love your products. And that's what we're doing with Sightlines. Questions? Come on, nothing? Where's the bar? Anything? All right. Sightlines is available. If you're a Sailthru customer and you've been a Sailthru customer for at least 3 months, we can turn it on, and you will have predictions the very next day. Those predictions are written to a user profile. That means they're accessible through the query tool, through Zephyr, through our reporting, through any of it. It's super simple, and it can make a difference to your business. Thank you very much.